I don't know why I'm writing this. I guess some part of me thinks that if I type it all out, make it digital and real in a way that isn't just a buzzing in my skull, maybe I can understand it. Or maybe it's just a confession. A warning. I don't know. The house is quiet now for the first time in my life. The only sound is the hum of the old refrigerator and the groan of the pipes when the heat kicks on. For 28 years, there was always another sound. The wheezing rasp of my mother's breathing, the constant wet cough that punctuated every conversation, and the low hiss of her oxygen tank. That sound was the soundtrack to my life. It's gone now. She's gone. And the silence is so much louder than the noise ever was. I live in the house I grew up in, a 2-story box with peeling paint on a street of other peeling boxes. This whole town is peeling. It's a Rust Belt ghost, a place that industry built and then abandoned, leaving behind skeletons of factories and people with nowhere else to go. I work in one of the few factories still running, doing the same job my father did, stamping out metal parts for machines I'll never see. It's a mindless, deafening rhythm that eats 8, sometimes 10 hours of my day. It pays enough to keep the lights on and buy my mother's cartons of cigarettes, the very things that were killing her. My father left when I was a kid. That was the official story. A note on the kitchen table, a duffel bag gone from the closet. I don't remember him. Not really. I have flashes, impressions. The scratch of a beard against my cheek, the smell of grease and cheap aftershave, a deep voice humming a tune I can't place. But he's a ghost, a hole in my life my mother papered over with flimsy stories. The thing is, we were never really alone. There were always the little brothers. They'd show up at night. Mom would come into my room, her hand on the shoulder of a skinny, nervous-looking kid, usually a few years younger than me at the time. They all had the same look, scruffy hair, worn-out jeans, a wary hunger in their eyes. "This one's had it rough," she'd whisper, the smoke from her cigarette curling around her head like a halo of poison. "He ran away. No place to go. He can stay with us for a bit. You'll be his big brother, okay? Show him the ropes." And I would. For a week, maybe a little longer, I'd have a brother. The first one, I remember his name was... No, let's just call him the first. He was quiet, but he loved my video games. We'd stay up late, the glow of the TV screen painting our faces, a bag of chips between us. I taught him the secret moves, the cheat codes. He'd sleep in the spare bunk bed, and in the dark, I'd hear him breathing, a small, steady presence in the room. It was nice, not being the only kid in the house. Then one morning I'd wake up and the bunk would be empty. The sheets were neatly folded, his worn-out backpack gone. The first time it happened, I panicked. I ran downstairs thinking he'd run away again. My mother was at the kitchen table, smoking, staring out at the gray morning. "Where is he?" I'd asked, my voice tight. She took a long drag, letting the smoke out in a slow, tired plume. "Your father came for him in the night," she'd say, not meeting my eyes. "He's going to help your father now. They have important work to do." I was 7. It made a strange kind of sense. My ghost father was a rescuer of lost boys. He'd take them away to a better place, a secret workshop where they'd do important man things. I was proud, in a way. I was helping. I was the first step in their salvation. There were so many of them over the years, maybe a dozen. The one who could draw incredible superhero comics on scrap paper. The one who was a genius at taking apart and fixing things. He got our toaster working again. The one who barely spoke but would follow me around like a shadow. Each time, it was the same routine. A week of brotherhood, of sharing my small world. And then, an empty bed in the morning and the same quiet, smoky explanation. As I got older, the story started to feel thin. By the time I was a teenager, I knew it was a lie. My dad wasn't coming back. He wasn't running a secret halfway house for runaways. But I never pushed it. Questioning my mother was like pushing on a wall that you knew was holding back a flood. There was a fragility to her, a deep, abiding terror behind the veil of smoke and cynicism. So I played along. I was the big brother for a week. And then I was alone again. The last little brother came when I was 16. By then, Mom's cough was worse. Her hands trembled. The kid was tougher than the others, more street smart. He asked a lot of questions. He wanted to know about the basement. "What's down there?" he asked one night, pointing at the door off the kitchen. "Just storage and a locked room," I said. "Junk." "What's in the locked room?" I froze. There was a room in the basement that was always locked. A heavy, solid wood door with a deadbolt. Mom always said the key was lost ages ago, that it was full of my grandfather's old chemical supplies from his hobby days, too dangerous to open. "I don't know," I told him. "No one's been in there for years." He looked at me, a sharp, assessing glance. "Smells weird. I think the smell coming from this basement." He was right. A faint, cloying sweetness, like rotting flowers and old meat, sometimes drifted up from under the door. We just got used to it, the smell of an old house. 2 days later, he was gone, and there were no more after him. The years passed. The town rusted a little more. I graduated, got the job at the factory. My life narrowed until it was just the factory, this house, and her. Her world shrank to the living room, then to the hospice bed they set up by the window. The lung cancer was a parasite eating her from the inside out. As she got worse, her mind started to go. Not all the time, but in flashes. The carefully constructed walls of her reality began to crumble. The lie about my father and the little brothers was one of the first things to show cracks. One night, I was changing her oxygen tank and she grabbed my arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her eyes wide with a terror that was more than just fear of dying. It was something ancient, something she'd lived with for decades. "You can't let him go hungry," she rasped, her voice a dry crackle. "Promise me, when I'm gone, you can't let him starve." "Who, Mom?" I asked gently, assuming she was confused. "There's no one else here." "Him," she hissed, her eyes darting towards the floor, towards the basement. "He's been so patient, he gets so hungry." I told the hospice nurse about it. She nodded sympathetically. "It's common," she said. "Terminal lucidity, paranoia, dementia. Her brain is protecting itself by creating narratives." But it felt like more than that. It felt like a truth she'd been holding back for so long was finally boiling to the surface, too hot for the cracked pot of her mind to contain. Driven by a need I couldn't name, I started searching the house. I needed an anchor, a piece of the real past to hold on to. I went into the hall closet, a place of dusty relics and forgotten things, and pulled out the old photo albums. I sat on the floor, the plastic-covered pages crinkling as I opened them. There we were. Me as a baby. My mother, young and smiling, without the deep lines of pain etched around her mouth. And my father. Or where my father should have been. In every single photograph, his face was gone. Not just crossed out with a marker, but meticulously, violently scratched away. A tiny circular violence had been done to each picture, the emulsion scraped down to the white paper beneath, leaving a featureless, horrifying blank where a man's face should be. My blood went cold. This was a secret, deliberately kept. Deeper in the closet, tucked under a pile of old blankets, I found a shoebox. It was heavy. Inside, it was full of newspaper clippings. Yellowed and brittle. They were all from neighboring towns, spanning a period of about 10 years. Each one was a small article about a missing child. A 10-year-old who vanished from a playground. A 12-year-old who ran away from a group home and was never seen again. A 9-year-old who disappeared on his way home from school. I started laying them out on the floor, my hands shaking. The dates. They lined up, roughly, with the memories I had. A clipping from the spring I was 10, when I had the little brother who loved to draw. Another from the fall I was 12, when the kid who fixed the toaster stayed with us. It was a mosaic of stolen children, and their faces, printed in grainy black and white, looked so much like the boys I remembered. Scruffy, wary, lost. I had to know. I took one of the clippings and went to her bedside. She was awake, her breathing shallow. The air was thick with the smell of sickness and menthol. I knelt down beside her, holding out the yellowed piece of paper. The photo was of a smiling boy with a gap in his teeth. "Mom," I whispered, my voice thick. "I remember him. He liked my comic books. You told me Dad came for him." Her eyes focused on the clipping, and for a moment, the fog of morphine and illness cleared. A tear, thick and slow, traced a path through the wrinkles on her cheek. She didn't speak. Instead, her trembling hand fumbled with the drawer of her bedside table. She pulled something out and pushed it into my hand. It was an old VHS tape, no label. "Watch this," she whispered, her breath catching. Her fingers gripped mine, a bundle of cold twigs. "After, not before. Then you'll know." Her eyes held mine, and the terror I'd seen before was back, stark and absolute. "You have to be the strong one now. You have to take over. You have to feed him." Those were the last words she ever said to me. She slipped into a coma that evening and passed away 2 days later. For a week, the house was a blur of logistics. The funeral home, the paperwork, the well-meaning neighbors with their casseroles. I moved through it all like a ghost in my own home. The silence was a heavy presence. The VHS tape sat on the kitchen counter, a black plastic rectangle full of answers I was terrified to hear. Finally, last night, I couldn't stand it anymore. The not knowing was worse than whatever horror the tape contained. I had to know what I was inheriting. I dug the old VCR out of the closet, a dusty behemoth from another age, and hooked it up to the small TV in the living room. My hands trembled as I pushed the tape in. The machine whirred and clunked, then the screen flickered to life with a burst of blue and static. The picture that resolved was grainy, the color washed out. It was a backyard barbecue. The date stamp in the corner read July 1998. I was a toddler in the video, chasing a ball across a patchy lawn. My mother, impossibly young, was laughing, holding a plate of hot dogs. And then the camera panned, and I saw him. My father. He was a normal-looking man. Brown hair, a kind smile, the same build as me. He was grilling, flipping burgers with a spatula. But something was off. Every few seconds, he'd reach back and scratch his shoulder blade, an awkward, pained motion. He'd wince, then force a smile when he saw the camera on him. The scene cut. Now it was indoors, a few weeks later according to the date stamp. My father was standing shirtless in the bathroom, his back to the camera, which must have been hidden. On his right shoulder blade was a growth. It wasn't a mole or a tumor, not like anything I'd ever seen. It was dark, almost purple, and had a strange, convoluted texture, like a piece of coral or wrinkled bark. Even in the poor resolution of the video, I could see a faint rhythmic pulsation to it. Cut again. The growth was larger now, the size of a fist. It had spread, tendrils of the same dark, veined tissue branching out over his back. My mother's voice, younger but strained with panic, was audible from behind the camera, talking to someone on the phone. "The doctors don't know what it is. They did a biopsy, but the sample. They said it was inert tissue, but it keeps growing. No, it's not cancerous. They said it's not cellular at all." Another jump, a doctor's office. The camera was shaky, probably my mother filming from her lap. A doctor was pointing at a series of x-rays on a light box. "As you can see," the doctor said, his voice clinical and detached, "it doesn't seem to be attached to the bone or the muscular structure. It's almost as if it's superimposed. We've never seen anything like it. It's proliferating at an exponential rate, but we can't identify what it is." The final scene change was the most jarring. The lighting was poor, the room lit by candles. My parents were in a cramped, cluttered room that looked like some back alley fortune teller's parlor. An old woman with a face like a dried apple sat across from them. Incense smoke curled in the air. "It is not a sickness," the old woman said, her voice a reedy whisper. "It is a seed, a passenger. It fell from a cold star and found a warm place to root. It eats. It grows. That is all it knows." "Can you remove it?" my father asked, his voice raw with desperation. The old woman shook her head slowly. "To remove it is to kill you. It is part of you now. Its roots are in your blood, your heart. It will consume you, and when it is done with you, it will keep growing. It will consume everything. What can we do? My mother's voice pleaded. Its hunger can be sated, the mystic said, her dark eyes glinting in the candlelight. Bargained with. It needs life, not the life it is attached to, but new life, small offerings, and it will slow the growth. It will keep it dormant. You feed the one, or it will feed on the many. The video cut to static, but the audio continued. It was my mother's voice, older now, recorded over the static, a narration, a confession. He wouldn't do it, she said, her voice flat and dead, the voice I'd known my whole life. Your father. He was a good man. He said he'd rather die. And he did. The growth, it took him over. It didn't just cover him, it absorbed him, changed him. But it was still him in there somewhere. And it was still hungry. It kept growing. It would have filled the house, the street, the town. The old woman was right. So I made a choice. I put it in the basement. I locked the door. And I fed it. I chose. I looked at the bedside table where she had passed. The key was still there where she'd left it. A single old-fashioned skeleton key, its brass tarnished with age and use. My hand was steady as I picked it up. There was no choice, was there? There was only duty, the legacy she'd left me. I walked to the kitchen and opened the door to the basement. The air that rose to meet me was thick, heavy, and cold. It smelled of damp earth, mildew, and that cloying, sickly sweet scent, much stronger now. It coated the back of my throat. I flipped the switch, and a single bare bulb at the bottom of the stairs flickered on, casting long, dancing shadows. Each wooden step groaned under my weight. The basement was unfinished, with a concrete floor and stone walls that wept with moisture. It was filled with the junk of a lifetime. Old furniture under white sheets like sleeping ghosts, boxes of forgotten belongings, my old toys. But I only had eyes for the door at the far end of the room. It was just as I remembered, but worse. The wood was dark and stained, warped from the damp. A strange, dark mold crept out from the edges of the frame. The deadbolt was thick and rusted. I could see deep, long scratches on the wood, gouges that seemed to start from about waist high. From the inside, my heart was screaming against my ribs. The key felt like a block of ice in my palm. This was it. The heart of the house, the source of the rot that had consumed my family, my town, my entire life. I put the key in the lock. It was stiff and I had to put my shoulder into it to get it to turn. The thunk of the deadbolt sliding back was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I took a deep breath, the foul air filling my lungs, and pulled the door open. It wasn't a room anymore. The concept of a room, 4 walls, a floor, a ceiling, was gone. Every surface was covered in a single contiguous mass of living flesh. It was a pulsating, vein-riddled membrane the color of a deep bruise, glistening wetly in the dim light of the bare bulb from the main basement. It moved with a slow, rhythmic undulation, like a lung breathing. The sweet, rotten smell was overwhelming, a physical force that made my eyes water. It was a terrarium of nightmare biology, a cancerous womb that had consumed its container. Hanging from the center of the ceiling, suspended by thick umbilical-like cords of the same flesh, was a shape. It was vaguely humanoid, a torso and limbs all fused into a single tumorous mass. And from the center of that mass, a face looked down at me. The features were distorted, swollen, but I recognized them from the home video. The shape of the jaw, the line of the nose, and the eyes. They were his eyes, open, aware, and filled with an ancient, bottomless hunger. It didn't make a sound. It didn't have to. As our gazes met, a thought bloomed in my mind, a voice that was not a voice, a feeling that was not my own. It was a simple, primal, all-consuming concept that echoed through every cell of my being. Hungry. I stood frozen in the doorway, the key cold in my hand, my mind a blank slate of pure terror. As I watched, paralyzed, a tendril of the flesh on the wall nearest to me began to move. It wasn't fast, but it was deliberate, It elongated, stretching out from the wall, a new vein pulsing to life along its length. It grew before my very eyes, reaching for me across the threshold. It had been months, maybe even years, since the last time my mother had been able to walk down these stairs, years since its last meal. The hunger was a screaming, physical agony that I could feel radiating from the creature in waves. I closed my eyes, and a slideshow of faces flashed against the darkness of my eyelids. The boy who loved video games, the one who could draw, the quiet shadow, all the little brothers. I saw their faces, not as they were when they were with me, full of hope and a cautious trust, but as they must have been in their final moments, staring into this same, pulsing, hungry abyss. My breath hitched. My entire life had been a lie built on top of a horror I could never have imagined. I was the son of a monster, the son of a warden. And now, the choice my mother made all those years ago was mine. I took a step back, pulling the warped door shut. The tendril of flesh slapped against the wood on the other side, a wet, insistent sound. I turned the key, and the deadbolt shot home with a deafening crack of finality. I walked up the stairs, through the kitchen, and out the front door of the silent, rotting house. I didn't look back. The evening air of my dying town felt cool on my face. The streetlights cast long orange stripes on the cracked pavement. I know what I have to do. I have to be the strong one now. I have to stop its growth, but first, I have to feed him. I shoved my hands in my pockets and started walking, my footsteps echoing in the empty street. I walked towards the glow of the downtown lights, towards the bus station, towards the overpass, towards the parts of town where the lost kids always seem to congregate. And as I write this now, after my first new little brother has gone, I feel it in my chest, the weight my mother carried for her whole life,